In the world of Scythe, the Scythedom, the institution of scythes, is the only one where the thunderhead, an all-knowing AI, refuses to govern or try to control. The scythes operate completely without rules, nor do democratic votes control it. They answer to no algorithm. Their only accountability is to each other. And if you know anything about human psychology, the alarm in your head should be going off. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted what would become one of the most infamous experiments in history, the Stanford Prison Experiment. He divided college students randomly into prisoners and guards. In just 6 days, the experiment had to be shut down, as the guards had become abusive, controlling, cruel, not because they were always evil, but because this structure of unchecked power changed them. Zimbardo named this the Lucifer effect. The idea that good people, placed in the wrong system, will do evil things. Sound familiar? Look at Scythe Goddard. At the start of the book, he is someone who is charming, charismatic. He was convinced that enjoying the act of taking a life made him more honest than scythes, who pretend to feel remorse. He rationalized his own corruption so much he sees it as a virtue. But in reality, this is just him rationalizing for who he is. See, when the mind constructs a logical justification for behavior it knows is morally wrong, it does so to avoid the discomfort of guilt. Now let's compare him to Scythe Faraday. He represents what psychologists refer to as moral restraint under power. He is acutely aware of what the ring on his finger means. He gleans with grief. He keeps a journal of every life he has taken. He builds rituals of accountability for himself, because he understands this system has none. The stark contrast between Goddard and Faraday isn't just your typical good versus evil. It's a psychological study in what happens when two people receive the same unchecked power but live very different mindsets in who they want to be. And here is the uncomfortable question the book asks us. In a world with no consequences, no oversight, and no death, which one would we become? Now let's talk about death itself, or more accurately, the absence of it. In 1973, cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker published a book called The Denial of Death. His central argument was radical. He believed almost everything humans do, our ambitions, our religions, our legacies, and our need to leave a mark on the world, is driven by something deeper, our fear of death. Becker argued that the awareness of knowing one day you will die is so psychologically destabilizing that we spend our entire lives constructing what he called immortality projects, things that make us feel like we will live on in some way, even after death. We build families, we create art, we go to war, and if need be die for ideologies we believe will outlast us. This theory was later developed by psychologists Jeff Greenberg, Sheldon Solomon, and Tom Pyszczynski into what is now known as terror management theory, or TMT. And it has been supported by hundreds of experiments showing that when people are reminded of their own mortality, their behavior changes. They cling more tightly to their cultural beliefs, become more hostile to those different from them, and work harder to build legacy and meaning. Now take all of that framework and drop it into the fictional world of Scythe. In this world, death has become something almost forgotten, because people don't die here, they get gleaned. And gleaning is so rare that the average person will almost never think about it. But what does this do to humanity? Shusterman shows this in a very interesting way. As people become so comfortable and safe, knowing nothing can ever happen to them, this creates a sense of purposelessness, because what would we be without knowing one day we will be gone and forgotten? The urgency disappears and the stakes of a mortal life disappear. This is almost perfectly what terror management theory would predict. If death no longer drives us, what does? If we don't need immortality projects because we already are immortal, what gives our life meaning? Scythe notices this throughout the book, observing people who seem to just drift through life without a real direction. And it raises a deeply unsettling question that Shusterman never fully answers, and probably isn't supposed to. Is there meaning without mortality? Now let's talk about the people at the centre of this world, Scythe and Rowan. Neither of them asked for this. Neither of them wanted it. And that was deliberate. Faraday specifically chooses apprentices who don't want the ring, because he understands something the rest of them don't, or have forgotten. The people who seek power are the most dangerous ones to give it to. But here's where it gets psychologically complicated. Over the course of their training, Scythe and Rowan don't just grow. They grow in two completely different directions. Scythe becomes harder, more rigid, more committed to rules and order as a way of holding on to who she once was in a system that threatens to erase her. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure, when a person locks down their sense of self tightly and early. It is usually a response to an environment that feels threatening. It's a survival mechanism that comes at a cost. Rowan goes the opposite direction. Under Goddard's influence, he becomes fluid, adaptable, to the point of being unrecognizable. Psychologists refer to this as identity diffusion, and this is his biggest strength and his biggest weakness. Same situation, same moral weight, two very different psychological responses brought by the same circumstances. And this is where Shusterman connects to something much older than this book. Psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg spent decades studying how humans develop morally. He argued we move through stages, from following rules to avoid punishment to following them because it's what's expected of you, then eventually because of your own internal moral compass, independent of what anyone tells you. By the end of Scythe, Scythe and Rowan are being pushed violently toward that final stage. They are forced to ask not what the Scythedom says is right, but what do I believe is right? Even when those two things are in direct conflict. And that is what this book has been building toward. Because Scythe was never truly about a dystopian future. It was about three things as old as humanity itself. What power does to people who were never meant to hold it. What we lose when we stop being afraid of disappearing. And who we become when the world stops telling us who to be and forces us to decide for ourselves. Shusterman didn't write this as a warning to us. He wrote a mirror. And what you see in it depends entirely on how honest you're willing to be with yourself.